I slow down to a calmer pace and begin my progress down the western bridge. It would be reckless to consider going against the guide's directions. I walk at a moderately brisk pace, not wanting to risk tripping or running out of energy in a moment where I need it. If the eeriness of the lake was disconcerting before, now it is overwhelming. The blizzard-like fog drifting over the waters limits my vision to the span of my arms. See, it seems like there are a bunch here. But it doesn't actually seem like there's that many when it's convenient for the story. It's weird. The utter silence was a comfort despite how otherworldly it felt, but the whispering of the lake has started to stir now. I gulp despite myself. They've noticed me. Okay. I'm gonna take another second here to just spit out a story beat. Like, or a story reason for why maybe they ignore when someone dies. So the lake could be cursed, right? The bridge is also a curse. And the way to appease the Nixie, the mutated or whatever from the curse people who have died in this lake before, the only way to appease them is to give them more of them. So anyone who they kill becomes one of them. So doubling or just adding one more to their numbers appeases them and makes them not come after anyone else. So sacrificing one person is better because they leave you alone more. But it doesn't... I mean, it could make sense for a curse to get greedy. But again, it doesn't make sense for all of these to be here right now when 2 people have died. You know? I don't know. Oh, well, that's my thing. I don't know if we're gonna be explained anything because, I mean, if the guide has been here this long, it would make sense for him to know more about what's going on with the lake. If he basically lives on the lake, then he should know why it's like it is. Why would he do it otherwise? I don't know. Oh, this is frustrating. Okay, the utter silence was a comfort despite how otherworldly it felt, but the whispering of the lake has started to stir now. I gulp despite myself. They've noticed me. As their chattering grows, I consider briefly if the others hear them as well, or if they have come out specifically because I am on my own. Can I skip this? No. I straighten my back and walk more surely. I cannot let them believe I am an easy target. I even consider keeping my sword in hand, but it doesn't seem entirely likely they would realize it is something that could hurt them. To keep my mind from wandering into dark places, I count my steps like we used to in training. 1, 2, 3, 4. Despite my best efforts, things are starting to get to me. My worries wash over me, causing painful twinges underneath my clothes that make me jerk and twitch like a fly-bitten horse. The whispering in human voices, the feeling of vulnerability, the horrible thought of being hopelessly lost all melded together is consuming me. My pace breaks from the steady rhythm of my counting set. It quickens more as I start to succumb to fear. My brisk steps turn into... On the desk. Yeah, buddy? It's a small one, so I'm not scared. My brisk steps turn into long, frantic strides. Something in me whispers, faster, go faster, don't let them catch you, and I listen. I break into a long run. Like moving on landmines, flashes of fear explode in my mind and drive my feet harder, faster, stronger along the path. Until suddenly my sense of reason... I'm gonna blow this fire. Until suddenly my sense of reason returns and I stop dead. My chest rises and falls with deep heaving breaths as I try to calm myself down. The monsters erupt into an inharmonious chorus of what sounds to me wicked laughs. I fight the urge to shout back at the creatures. This feels like a nightmare I will never wake up from. I take another breath and resume my measured progress. It's difficult to tell how much time has passed. It must have been hours, however, judging by how much energy I've expended. Since the time I recomposed myself, I have not stopped walking for a second. Despite how much distance I've put behind me, the twisting route still feels endless. I weave through the labyrinth, not allowing myself to dwell on the whispering creatures hidden below my feet. It's the guide. You know what I'm gonna hate about this? If the guy doesn't show any emotion towards Kika at all. If he's not like, what I really love is like stoic, unemotional people showing emotion. It like fuels me. I love that fucking character type so much. It's not my favorite, but I love it a lot. Suddenly, from out of the nothingness, a faint light appears in the distance. It floats peacefully through the fog as if beckoning me towards it. The worry that my tired eyes are playing tricks on my mind drives me to furiously rub them and look again. There it remains, drifting alone. Are the bridges ablaze again? No, the light isn't growing. Could it be the shore? Mesmerized, I begin to sprint towards the phantom light. The shine gets brighter and sharper until the source becomes clear. It's the lantern of the guide. He's here. My eyes widen incredulously as I stop in front of him. I cannot believe this. We were able to reunite in this maddening world of fog. No matter the shock, I notice immediately that he stands alone. Bemele is not with him. The weight of what that means hits me like a physical blow. I can only manage one word.
Where?
On the shore.
Oh. What? How? A fountain of questions fills up my mind, yet I am no longer capable of releasing any kind of sound. Seeing the struggles I am having in processing what's happening, the guide reaffirms the fact of the matter.
We reached the other side. No one has died.
Fractions of tears form in the corners of my eyes, and for a brief moment I'm completely overjoyed. Bemele made it. He is alive, safe. Now that it is obvious, I fully understand. The guide unceremoniously turns around and heads down the bridge.
We need to move quickly.
I blink several times, unsure of how to react to what could be considered a miracle, but I instinctively follow to avoid being left behind. Our journey continues. The bridges, the lake, the destination, and the guide, they are all the same as they ever were. Yet for me, nothing feels the same. I have lost my sense of grounding. In this strange new situation, talking to the guide does not seem especially daunting. It makes it possible for me to finally speak aloud what has been lurking in my mind.
Why are you here?
If he truly made it to shore, what would compel him to return to the maze? It's a risk he of all people would know is great. He answers without turning. I am not allowed to see his face, but I get the sense that he is frowning.
Do you assume the death of a traveler is my first choice? To have any worth as a guide of this lake, you cannot be a fool. But neither can you be a coward. I knew that you would still be here.
The guide leaves it there. Again, my eyes well up with tears that threaten to spill over. He believed I would survive. He put his trust in my abilities enough to come find me.
Thank you.
I watch the guide's smooth gait as we continue on. Countless thoughts I want to tell him dance around my mind. However, he is the one to break the growing silence. That is surprising in and of itself. What he actually says is even more so.
Would you like to tie a string between us?
What?
Tying a string from my wrist to yours will ensure we don't drift too far apart, and is a reminder you're not alone. If someone is taken, the string will snap. It is calming without putting either person in further danger. It cannot be done when there are many people. The lines would become tangled. Since it is only the two of us, it is an option I can offer you.
Oh, how romantic. He flicks his eyes back to search for my response. Oh, yes. I stand awkwardly, dumbfounded at the offer. Somehow the idea makes me nervous, but I cannot argue its benefits. I need to pull the guide back up. The guide ceases walking as well and dives a hand into his coat. I fidget in place, trying to remain alert. After rummaging for a moment, he brings a spool of string out of his pocket. The guide pivots his body and tosses it to me. I manage to catch the spinning spool in the air as it attempts to unravel.
Tie it to the end of your wrist, and then throw it back.
I do as instructed, tying the knot tight. After giving the guide a signal, I toss the string across the length of the bridge to him. It creates a thin brown lifeline between us. He catches it dexterously. I don't know. That's such an annoying word. Okay, with his free hand. Turning to the side for a moment, he rests his staff in the crook of his arm. He snaps the string, storing the rest of it away before he locks the other end onto his own wrist. The guide gathers a section of our link in his hand and tugs on it, making sure that my side isn't too loose. He stares down the path at me and we make eye contact. As he gazes into me, I notice that there isn't an emptiness in his eyes, only strength. When did he change? I begin to wonder if I was the one who had to change in order to see what was always there. He shifts his focus away, and the action pulls me forcibly back into reality. I wait for the guide to get a proper hold of his staff, and then we begin walking once more. The whispers of the lake ring loudly into the night. Occasionally, I steal a look down at the string. The effect it's having on me already is quite remarkable. Seeing it connect from my wrist to his does make me feel far better. It hasn't made us safer, but the dread of being left alone again has faded. I find myself wishing I could get those thoughts across to him. However, I am aware enough to know that this is not the time for those kind of concerns. The whispers die down until they completely dissipate like steam in the cold. The remaining sounds in my sphere of awareness now are our footsteps and my measured breathing. Earlier, the guide mentioned that talking amongst one another was fine as long as you remained aware of what is happening. I wonder whether he would mind conversing. It isn't to divert worries like it was on the first night. It's that I would like to hear him speak further. The more I've learned about him, the more interested I've become. I need to save here, apparently. Just because there's another achievement I can get. I don't know if I'll record it, if I'm perfectly honest. I just don't.
Yes.
Guide?
Is it still appropriate to speak? If so, I would welcome a conversation with you.
He is silent for a time. The anticipation wraps itself taunt around my neck as I wait for his reply.
I have a name.
Oh.
What?
At the beginning, when I explained that silence was not necessary, your first comment was asking my name. I lied then. I do have a name.
I find myself at a loss for words. It's such a small thing, and yet it feels momentous. He has a name, lied to me about it, is admitting to the lie he got away with, and he remembered my question even through the chaos. Without persuasion, he unveils more.
I do not wish to share it.
Wow, alright then.
Explaining why is also undesirable. Thus, I've come to tell others I simply don't have one. It's surprising how easily others accept something as unusual as not having a name.
Despite facing away from me, I feel his last line was spoken through a smile. Still, it is admittedly quite strange. Even if someone is unnamed at birth, there is nothing stopping them from choosing their own. I grow red-faced at how that never occurred to me all this time. It wasn't degrading, but pointing that out may have been an intentional jab at my expense. He does not speak further, and the delicate pleasantries between us evaporate. His silence isn't the sort caused by a lack of topics, rather it's pensive. He's thinking on something. I wait for him. I would rather let him finish his thought than rush to fill the void with just any words. And he does finish.
It is easier to leave someone calling for help when they aren't pleading to you with your name.
In the back of my mind, I worried it had to be something like that. I don't bother asking him the obvious burning question. If he wanted me to know, he would have said it. He's still afraid to give me his name. I go with the next option instead.
How long have you been known as the guide?
I cannot say for certain. The past is something of a blur to me. Keeping count of time is difficult when so little changes on Sinnlos. I imagine it must have been several years.
The guide couldn't be significantly older than I am. Such a large part of his life belongs to this lake. I tried to give the dour thought a positive light.
Very few would be able to manage that position with so few years behind them. You are highly talented.
Just like my father.
Oh, this is a turn in the conversation that I had not expected.
I recall hearing many similar comments back when I spoke with those who knew Garvin.
Garvin the Exemplar led his people to so many victories. He is a genuine hero to my village. I admit, it is curious to speak with his progeny.
You're not. I am not Garvin's son. He would tell you so were he still alive.
I flinch at his words and immediately regret mine. I spoke so brazenly, it was nothing but thoughtless. I ready apologies, however there isn't an opportunity to even open my mouth before he adds more.
I know that when I was very young, I had no one to help me. I was to take care of myself. One day I decided to travel to the shores of Sinnlos, where Garvin was. No one attempted to stop me. After many years on the battlefield, Garvin claimed territory in the area and founded villages. He wanted to understand the mystery of the bridges, or perhaps find another way to cross. To him, the dangers were a new fight, a new purpose. He was deeply wrong. Sinnlos is far more than that. There was a presence residing in the lake that they didn't truly understand at the time. I didn't like what was happening. I tried to convince Garvin and his men to break their encampment and move on. It was at first assumed that I was merely a strange, overly fearful child from one of the nearby villages. However, with my persistence in getting him to go somewhere safe and the way I looked, it didn't take long for the rumors to start. Garvin did all he could to snuff out the belief that I was his child.
But he was such a good
This
guy,
day, I
but
wonder if that
he
was the
shunned
reason
his
he
own
refused to
child.
listen to me, or anyone else who began to think leaving might be for the best. After several weeks of investigation, Garvin walked out onto the bridges as he had done many times prior. He brought with him a long rope which he tied to the dock. Usually he was able to return from his brief trips without any issue. However, that night, he never returned. His men pulled in the rope and found there was no one at the end. The rope was slashed through. That was when the creatures got their title, Nixie.
Does Nixie mean something that I don't know?
The loss of Garvin the Exemplar
I know there's
was
like
significant.
Nixt,
Many years passed before
Nixt.
any large effort was made to approach the lake again.
which I know the word, but I
During that
can't
time,
for the
I
life of me
retreated
think
from
of the
public
definition
eye.
right now.
It would have been too much for me to hold on to what Garvin left behind.
Maybe it's not even a word. Maybe I'm just going crazy.
That life wouldn't last, for eventually interest in Sinnlos as a connector
Well,
between villages on opposite sides was ignited.
Nick.
I could not ignore it. I made my return to society
Definition.
to continue what I started.
Put an end to cancel. So, I mean, I thought it was something like that because I've heard it a lot in like in a business sense, I guess. So what to end? So Nixie, Nixt. That's the only connection I can think to that.
Despite Garvin's view on me, everyone from the original endeavor recognized me as his son. I was allowed to be directly involved as a member of the group. There were new attempts to cross the bridges. I was the first to survive it. All who were on the journey with me were lost. I left whoever had difficulties to the maze. It was a seemingly endless night. Death was at every turn. However, turning this back was not an option any longer. They were now willing to accept the loss of a few if it could mean success in the end. I cannot criticize them for it. I was willing to accept the same for my own cause. I continued to cross the lake solely to show people firsthand the horrors. I told myself that I was to survive the trips at all costs. If I didn't, what would become of my hope for the future? The ones who did not live to tell the tale were an inevitability I did not turn away from. My remorselessness, innate talent, and luck were what enabled me to make it across each time. And then it came to be that no one who knew of what lies in Sinnlos wanted to cross without me. My experience was invaluable. I used that to my advantage.
It was invaluable, but people always died.
They wanted a way to cross the lake, and I could give it to them. I took my position as a guide, and the rest of the group returned to protect their villages from the many other threats that plagued this land. It was...
I didn't mean to do that. The guide shakes his head, ending his story. I have trouble responding immediately. It is much to take in. Eventually, I do manage to respond.
I appreciate you sharing all of that with me.
There's a sigh.
It has been too long since I have explained myself to anyone. What happened then should not be a mystery. And yet, it is difficult for me to speak of.
He doesn't say anything more. However, I get a forlorn impression from him. I can see a whisper of it in his eyes briefly before he turns away. I'm not sure how close we are to land, but we have definitely made progress at a steady rate. I find my vision drifting down to the string between the two of us. It delicately sways to the rhythm of our steps. It eases my mind. The Nixie grow louder again, their whispers ringing in an eerie chorus from both sides of the bridge. Between their chatter, I hear what I believe is a sigh from the guide.
Tika.
The sound of my name spoken so irritably catches me off guard. Despite how serious he seemed in that moment, the guy doesn't continue further. I wait. Still, not another word. It's unusual for the guide to second-guess himself in such a way. I'm at a loss for how to react. Does he, of all people, need encouragement to continue? Or would it merely be an annoyance? Fuck, what do? I need to wait the timer, apparently. It seems he truly has no desire to continue. I have no right to push the issue. The two of us keep pace as we cross bridge after bridge. Occasionally, I catch sight of a prowler down another pathway. That is the closest to danger we come. Light begins to filter through the darkness, illuminating the fog.
We're going to run. We can still make it.
I tense at his words, but nod firmly. There is no gradual increase of pace. The two of us dash down the bridges frantically as the sun rises higher and higher. The silhouette of land comes into view in the distance, and the end of the bridges practically rushes toward us. Seconds later, we are free of them. I feel my feet plunge into the sandy shore. I nearly collapse as we get away from the waterline. I struggle to catch my breath. The guide lightly crouches, using his staff to support himself. He still takes a moment to reassure me, explaining through gasps that Bemele could not remain here on the shore because it would have been too unsafe. My legs quiver below me as the adrenaline rushes out of my body. I rest quietly for a few moments, taking time to allow my breathing and emotions to settle down. Despite my exhaustion, I feel touched as I'm reminded by just how much the guide risked coming back out to find me. I'm so grateful to have reached this far, and I'm just as glad that he survived. Tears begin to stream down my cheeks. The guide straightens himself out with one more deep breath. I smile at him as we catch eyes. I'm amazed when he ever so slightly returns it. The sight is enough to rob me of my better judgment. I close the remaining distance between us and wrap my arms around him. His eyes widen as he stiffens in my embrace. I rest my head gently against his shoulder and begin to cry anew. Between my sobs, I manage to speak.
We made it.
Yes.
He's like, "What the fuck, girl? Get off me." I hold him for just a little longer, reveling in the joy that it's finally all over and we're both all right. I'm aware I'm lingering, so I let go of him, making sure to step back some at the same time. He, in turn, puts even more distance between us. The guide pointedly looks away in a manner that can only be seen as bashful. I start to feel heat rise to my cheeks and likewise look away. I survey our surroundings instead. My thoughts slowly begin to format themselves properly. Since Bemele is not here, I should reunite with him at Hema, the village we were assigned to. Inevitably, my mind also drifts to those that did not make it here. The ones that no one will ever be able to see again. A sinking feeling grows in the pit of my stomach. The guide's nervousness has calmed, and his cold glare has returned as sharp as it ever was. He speaks to me with a distant tone. "You should leave."
You cannot stay.
Yeah.
Even if we've left the night behind us, this place is not safe. And now there is nothing here for you. Leave.
I stand up, stalk straight, and turn to face the guide directly. A minute, I need to move in my chair. Oops. Okay, he grabs hold of the thread that has been connecting us all this time and snaps it. The symbolism of that gesture is not lost on me.
When you leave, I ask that you share your experience with those who might wish to cross the lake. Let them know the toll it takes. I cannot say this to most because they may question my commitment, but I do not believe you will. If you are willing, I would like to have your support in my foolish dream of keeping others away from
Not
Sinnlos.
foolish, it's a death trap. Regardless of how he delivered the message, I am moved by the sincerity in his words.
I will do whatever I can to ensure no one I know takes the journey.
He gives me the barest hint of a smile. I'm acutely aware of the terrible circumstances surrounding this experience. It drags my spirit down again. Still, if the guide can smile and thank me, then I should at least reciprocate. He turns his gaze downwards, the faint smile having not yet faded. I hope that his goal will be achieved one day. I teeter in place uncomfortably. Finally, I steel myself and take a breath to force my words out.
I'd like to see you again. One day.
You can't.
His response is immediate and severe. That reaction doesn't surprise me, nor does it put any kind of damper on my determination.
I won't attempt to cross the bridges. I will only come to meet you.
His expression tightens slightly.
And when will you do so? While I am asleep during the day so I can guide at night? When I am on the island during a crossing? Or will you attempt to have a discussion with me while travelers are waiting to begin what will likely be their last journey?
With each question he poses, his frustration grows. I match his expression with a hard stare of my own.
I will find a way.
There is no way. You have to move on. Life does not exist as long as you remain in Sinnlos. It is a purgatory residing on the edge of death.
Then what about you? You deserve a life of your own, same as anyone else.
He merely
is
shakes
too
his head.
late. The dead cannot be revived.
As if to illustrate his own point, the light drains from his face and it becomes an image of emptiness.
Leave this place and never come back. Please.
I stare at him hard before lowering my head. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm being unreasonable. It doesn't matter what I would like for the guide. It's his decision. All I'm doing is being selfish.
I'm sorry. That was out of hand.
He doesn't answer me. I look up from the ground, my face serious again.
I will inform the village I'm heading to and my own that the bridges are not to be crossed.
He looks into my eyes for a heartbeat before nodding, satisfied with my answer.
Goodbye. Thank you for your guidance. I am grateful.
My voice drops to slightly above a whisper.
Be safe.
He doesn't react to the request. I wait for a moment, then start walking into the forest. There is a lump in my throat. I know that once I step away from this lake, I will never see him again. The fact is a painful gouge in my chest. We were with each other for only a short time, but I cannot deny that he has had a greater effect on me than almost anyone I have ever met. I allow myself to look back one last time. He's a pretty man. The guide is looking at me with a quiet, solemn expression. Watching him stand all alone on that shore, appearing the way he does, he seems lost. But it is abundantly clear this is his honest wish. That somehow makes it all the more heart-wrenching. Only he can save a person from Sinnlos. There is not anyone who can do the same for him. I desire nothing more than to do something. Something to stop this lake from taking so much. I finally believe I understand him in some small way. However, we have separate paths we must follow and they cannot meet again. I turn forward again and walk with purpose, further and further away from the cursed lake and the brave guide who dwells there. With a solemn heart, okay, yeah. Emily was of great help. Yeah, he was good. Thoughtful person, and urge them to show respect for her passing. Right. After arriving at my homestead at the end of a long journey, I decided to take a chance. I requested an audience with my leader and presented a letter to give to the guide when he makes a report. He graciously accepted my request. Later, I was informed that the guide did indeed receive the message. He gave no response, either positive or negative. I cannot be sure if he does not mind or simply does not care. He may not have even read my letter. But I want the two of us to remain connected, even if in just some small way. I cannot give in after all, it seems. Something in me feels he wasn't too caught off guard that my stubbornness extends this far. Until he orders I cease communication entirely, I will keep him in my life, no matter how distant, whilst sharing a window into my own. And all the while I will continue to support the secret wish he keeps, the one that I now share. And I got an achievement that says lost. I don't know why. Alright. And for the last thing, we're going to load this guide. And then, if you'd like to speak, please do. The guide sighs. There's a feel to it that I've never heard from him before.
I apologize for what I said earlier, before the bridge sank. At the time, I was simply frustrated. This journey has not gone as I would have liked. Yet, that is no excuse for my behavior.
I'm not sure what to say. Was that truly worrying him? Unexpected seems much too weak a word to describe
I have
this.
grown accustomed to withholding sympathy from those I guide in order to protect myself.
Oh, I'm missing so many achievements.
I do not feel it.
How is that possible? I'm literally doing an achievement guide.
I still do.
Alright.
Somewhere deep within me.
Oh, sorry, I keep freaking hitting the desk. To hear him speak this way is more meaningful than he might realize. It reflects my own mindset.
I assumed that was the case. One cannot get angry if one does not feel something. When indifference is merely a mask, it can be hard to maintain. I understand that all too well.
It seems you do. We have that much in common.
I smile faintly.
Your mask is far more secure than mine.
Yes, I would say so.
The exchange makes my smile grow. To truly connect with someone who I can relate to is nice. I didn't hope anyone felt the same sense of weakness I did.
I acknowledge the consideration you have shown towards me thus far. However, if you feel yourself sympathizing with me, you would do best to ignore it. Even if my position in life is difficult, I do not regret it.
I honestly thought that we... What? How have people... I'm very confused. I am not the only one who noticed a connection beginning to form. He would not have felt a need to reaffirm a sense of separation between us otherwise. I cannot help but reflect on all that I've learned about the guide on this painful journey we've shared. His determination in even the most difficult circumstances, his hope to keep others safe, his vexation at failing to do so, his concern for me and my wishes, and even his hints of humour. It is far too late for me to feel nothing towards him.
The most I could do now was hide behind that false mask of indifference. I cannot ignore your trouble so easily. I suppose this means I failed to follow your advice on finding a new perspective. If even you were not able to surmount those painful feelings, there is no chance for me. I won't run from what is
I'm so
difficult
confused.
any
There's these
longer. So I can say I
there's these
followed
achievements
thousands of
that don't
new
exist on the
ways.
global achievements page. What does that mean? The guide pauses before speaking again.
Our situations aren't the same. You face your challenge willingly. I have no choice. In some ways, life is its own maze. There are so many directions ahead with no way of knowing where they will take you.
Look, just stick
But
a
it is
bunch
not
of
that way
signs
for
at
me.
either end
There
saying,
is
"You will definitely
only this
die
one
if you
path.
try to cross this bridge.
I
Please
cannot go
go
back.
around."
I cannot take another way.
Like maybe some
and I cannot
skulls,
stop.
lots of exclamation points. People will get the
Because that
point.
is true,
Maybe
I will
even put some
continue
like
to walk
skeletons
forward on my
around, like
solitary
even if
bridge
they're not
until the day
real.
I die here on this
People will
lake.
get the point that you will die if you cross the bridge. You don't have to weather the travel and the pain of it all.
I hope they do, for my own sake.
His voice remains strong, but it does not hide the sadness and loneliness from me. It is a desperate justification for the way he spent his life to this point and how he intends to use his remaining time. I don't need to be convinced. He should not need to tell himself such words either.
You would make a very fine guard.
We
and
are going
in
to
your
die
own way
if we
you
keep
are.
talking.
My hope is that you're proud of all you've done these many years. You deserve to be.
Thank you.
His voice is soft, but I hear him fine through the silence. In this moment, it feels as though there is only us.
You're welcome.
There are no more words between us, and we continue on. Can we skip? I curl my fingers into tight fists. He only wants to do what he believes is best, what is necessary, but still.
I cannot accept that.
He's furious for the briefest moment. Then the anger melts away and he sighs sorrowfully as he presses his forehead against his staff. The guide's eyes slip closed and he seems to be at a loss for what to do. I stand firm in place, though say nothing further, allowing him to gather his thoughts. After a few moments, he speaks without moving anything but his mouth.
I am not one who is skilled with words. I have had endless difficulties convincing people to listen to me in many situations. However, you have seen for yourself what Sinnlos is. Why won't you leave? What do I have to do to make you understand that there is nothing you can gain from returning and so much you can lose?
His voice is steady and level, yet I sense desperation driving it.
There is something. You're here. I've come to know you during this journey, and I cannot simply leave you behind. Enough has been lost already.
His eyes flick open, settling on my face. His expression is unreadable. Silently, the guide stands upright. He turns his back to me and walks onto the bridges.
Wait!
I step in front of the bridges warily. Where did such incredible recklessness come from? I can't fathom what he's possibly thinking. I squint my eyes, trying to see into the fog. This is madness, but if it was a certain death, he would not have done it. I choose to believe in his abilities and hastily run onto the bridges after the guide. We've come too far for me to let him go this way. He doesn't venture very far into the maze. He has already stopped and moved to face me as I rush up towards him.
The sun has almost risen. The bridges will sink any moment. We need to return to the shore.
It's terrifying, isn't it? This lake and these bridges, you wouldn't deny that, would you?
I purse my lips together. It isn't possible to guess where this is going yet, but I can deduce the results he's aiming for. Still, I have to answer honestly.
No. I can admit that being on these bridges and near the lake like this is frightening. I also am aware that those fears are grounded in a real threat. Neither of those are enough to make me forsake you.
You already have.
I look at him baffled.
Sinnlos is what created me. Who you see would not exist without this lake. I am reflected in it. On the surface, we are cold and unsettle those around us. If you peer any closer, you will only find darkness and ugliness. You have to leave before you are lost to our heartless depths forever. Do you understand? I don't want to hear any more from you. I can't stand listening to it.
I bite back sudden violent tears. You shouldn't have to do this.
Nothing has forced you to stay here. You have legs that could take you far away from this place. You choose to stay because you want to make a difference. It isn't the same. I know that you will never allow yourself to leave no matter the circumstances. Not after everything you have sacrificed. But why does that mean you have to be alone? I can't see that as the only way.
I stop, puffing as I catch my breath. His only reaction is looking at me with a listless expression, vacant as the fog.
Go back to the shore.
I won't. Not unless you come with me. You understand these bridges far better than I. If it is safe enough for you to stand there, then it is safe enough for me as well.
His annoyance with me is clear. He is practically rolling his eyes. I much prefer this to how he was only moments before.
Can't you understand that I do not want you here? I wish to have no connection with the world I am separated from. My path is narrow, dangerously so. You're not
This
aware
back and
of the
forth is
weight
just a
your
bit
decision
tiring.
Truly have. But I can assure you, it will only cause us both to suffer unnecessarily.
I've said that I will do what it takes. We can fix what goes wrong or find a way to counteract it.
His reply is scoffing, almost a laugh at how ridiculous the statement sounds to him.
There is no solution, only consequences. Any strength of yours is meaningless if I am weak, and I am much too weak. If I allowed you into my life, I could not properly act as the guide any longer. It would be the end of everything I've done.
His words claw against my skin, painfully urging me to stop this, yet I cannot. His life has been traumatizing. He's been alone all this time, and now remaining lost seems easier than reaching out to another person. It would be shameful if I abandoned him because it may make my life simpler.
Then I will shoulder the consequences for the both of us. You do not have to fear.
This is taking so long. He stares at me with what I can only assume is disbelief.
So, this is what matters to you?
My face softens a bit.
I don't want to give in.
Why?
It is a simple question he has every right to ask. I still wish he hadn't. I do not know if I am capable of explaining it in a satisfactory way.
Because I'm sure it must be possible so long as I'm willing to try. And because you should not have to forego happiness. And because I care about you.
As much as I wish not to, I have to look away when I make my declaration.
I understand that Sinnlos has done much to shape you into the man you are today. What I cannot believe is that it is everything. In the same way you have a name all your own that you keep hidden, I know you are more than the guide.
Tentatively, I look up at his face. He is far closer to me now. There's concern written over his features, or possibly even pain. I say nothing more. I'm not able to. He looks down the bridge that leads further into the lake, with frustration rising to the surface again. He mutters something to himself. Even with the sun's light continuing to pour over these bridges, I remain standing in front of him with no intention of leaving. He seems to be grappling with what that means. The man with a secret name turns to face me once more. He appears deeply worn in with exhaustion, but he is smiling at me.
I can't see why you would make such a choice, but I accept it. I don't have another option. And I am ready now for this to stop.
Cautiously, he reaches his free hand towards me. He places it over my hand, holding it. I wince in shock from what is happening. Despite my confusion, I don't move to push him away. I want this behavior. I want him to realize it is okay to reach out to me. Seeing that I haven't rejected his touch, he tugs me a little closer to him. Look, game, just last for a little bit more and it'll be done.
I am glad you shared your uncensored thoughts with me. You're admirable in many ways.
I try not to look as bewildered as I feel, my heart racing for far different reasons than usual. It becomes even harder to articulate words.
You are admirable as well.
He lightly chuckles. My heart lifts, elated to hear him laugh. I feel a reality where he smiles more often could come to be. But as quickly as I can think, his expression shifts to dark. I intend to ask why, but I am interrupted by him wrapping his staff hand around my back. Softly, he rests his forehead on mine. I freeze at the sudden intimacy. I suppose it is only fair considering what I did previously. Slowly but surely, I find myself relaxing into his embrace. My eyes close with his.
I'm tired. This has been a long journey.
We can rest.
Yes, we can.
Suddenly, the world is tilting forwards. I snap my eyes open. The guide is falling backwards towards the edge. He smiles, keeping his firm embrace of my torso. My mind races wildly, madly, hopelessly as I try to do anything to stop our descent, but we're a second above the water. We crash through the surface of the lake, our bodies nothing but two dead weights locked together. I try desperately to at least get a breath, but we plummet down faster than I can handle, leaving me choking on thick water. It presses in from every possible side, weakening me as we sink down, down. It grows darker as we descend further into the lake. My throat and chest burn so horribly I think I'm on fire from the inside. I can feel the water around us begin to move, squirming and slippery. The Nixie must have noticed our presence. Everything is a mess of shadows and blackness, but faintly, through the thick water and blurring vision, I see pale, bright spots up against me. It's the guide. His figure in the water is the very last thing I see as I feel the force pulling me. One more thought floats through my waterlogged mind as his form is taken further away. I was wrong. I never truly understood how he felt, not for one moment. Complete darkness envelops all my senses. Well, alright, you know what, I'm just not gonna even... I don't know. I don't know, like, the romance, can you even, like, call it a romance? There is, like, affection there, but it doesn't feel like there's any romance to this romance. Oh, I don't know, God. This is good for a free game. I don't want to be mean. I really don't. I really, really don't. I'm not trying to be mean. I think that someone put a lot of love and care into this, and I respect them deeply for that. So deeply. But that doesn't mean things are... Just because something is free and just because someone put a lot of hard work and care into it doesn't mean it's above critique. And I guess I've already given most of my critique and nothing really changed. Sure, the guide had some different expressions, but to me it wasn't enough. And even though this is like tagged as an otome game, like I wouldn't call it one. I would not call it one. But yeah, I mean, go play it for yourself if you want to play it without my whining. I would recommend that. I would definitely recommend that. I think it's lovely to see, you know, all different types of people in the game as well. I think that's really great. There are very pretty people in this game. So yeah. If you want to play a mildly horror visual novel where you get to kind of romance people and you are definitely gonna kill one along the way, yeah, play it for yourself. Yeah. I will see you in whatever I play next. Bye.